At some point in history, someone decided that simply ending a life wasn't enough. The method had to send a message to a crowd, to a rival, to anyone watching who might be having similar ideas. And across thousands of years of civilization, humanity turned out to be extraordinarily creative when it came to making that message as loud as possible. What follows are some of the worst methods of execution ever recorded, starting bad and ending somewhere that will make you genuinely grateful to live in the century you do. Number 6. The breaking wheel. Let's start somewhere Europe would rather forget. The breaking wheel was one of the most common forms of public execution in medieval and early modern Europe, used from roughly the 900s all the way into the 1800s. France, Germany, and much of the Holy Roman Empire all relied on it heavily. The basic idea was this: a condemned person was tied spread-eagle to a large cartwheel, or laid across it, and a large hammer or iron bar was used to methodically break the bones of the limbs, legs first, arms second. The executioner worked through the body systematically, joint by joint. The wheel was then often hoisted upright on a pole and displayed in the town square, sometimes for days, as a warning, as a spectacle. What made it particularly brutal wasn't just the physical reality of it, it was the duration. A person could survive this process for hours, sometimes longer, depending on whether the executioner was instructed to deliver a final blow to the chest, which was called the mercy stroke, or leave them to expire on their own. In some cases, the mercy stroke was explicitly withheld as part of the sentence. The wheel is also where we get expressions like breaking someone on the wheel, a phrase that eventually drifted into metaphor. The original meaning was a great deal more literal. Number 5. Pressing. Pressing sounds almost gentle compared to what came before. It wasn't. Used most famously during the Salem witch trials of 1692, though it had existed in England and Europe for centuries prior, pressing involved laying the accused flat on the ground, placing a large wooden board across their chest, and then stacking heavy stones on top, one at a time. It was not technically an execution method in every case. It was actually a legal tool. If a person refused to enter a plea in court, they could not be tried. And if they couldn't be tried, their property couldn't be legally seized after conviction. So some chose silence deliberately to protect what they'd leave behind for their families. Pressing was the response to that. The stones continued until the person either entered a plea or died. The most documented case from Salem is that of Giles Corey, an 80-year-old farmer who refused to plead at his witch trial in 1692. He endured 2 days of increasing weight before he died. His last recorded words, when the sheriff demanded a plea, were reportedly, "More weight." History has a way of producing lines that no writer would dare invent. What makes pressing particularly distinctive on this list is the slowness of it. There was no moment of shock, no sudden end, just an increasing, inexorable pressure, and the condemned person completely conscious throughout, which is something the other methods on this list don't uniformly share. Number 4. Flaying. We are now entering territory where even professional historians tend to use the phrase mercifully rare. Flaying, the removal of skin from the body, was practiced in the ancient world primarily as both execution and post-mortem humiliation. The Assyrian Empire in particular documented it extensively, which we know largely because they carved records of it into palace walls, with what can only be described as alarming pride. Assyrian kings used flaying as a tool of imperial messaging. Conquered enemies, rebel leaders, and those who broke alliances were publicly flayed, and their skins were displayed on the walls of cities, a highly visible, permanent warning to everyone in the region. The Romans recorded it being used on early Christian martyrs, most famously Saint Bartholomew, who is traditionally depicted in artwork holding his own skin, which sounds like the kind of detail a person would make up, except that it's been consistent across hundreds of years of independent historical record. What makes flaying land this far down the list isn't just the obvious. It's the intent behind it. Unlike the wheel or pressing, which were fundamentally punitive, society punishing a specific person for a specific act, flaying was often political theater, a demonstration of absolute power. The message wasn't just, "This person has been punished." It was, "We can do whatever we want to a human body, and we will display the evidence." That distinction between punishment and demonstration is what separates the methods on this list from the ones still to come. Number 3. The Judas Cradle. Named with almost impressive irony given what it involved, the Judas cradle is a device most closely associated with the Spanish Inquisition, though its historical documentation is sometimes disputed in its specific application. The device itself was a tall pyramidal seat with a pointed apex. The condemned was suspended above it by ropes, arms, and legs bound, and then slowly lowered. The point was positioned to cause maximum discomfort and injury as the person's body weight settled onto it over time. The ropes could be adjusted to control the rate of descent. They could also be used to create a bouncing motion, to periodically raise and then lower the person, to prevent sleep, to extend the process across an entire night or longer. What's historically significant about the Judas cradle, and what pushes it past the previous entries, is that it sat at the intersection of execution and interrogation. In many documented cases, it wasn't used as a final punishment at all. It was used to extract confessions, which were then used to justify trials, which then led to other punishments. The device was essentially a machine for producing the outcome the court had already decided on. It also couldn't be cleaned properly due to its construction, which meant it was rarely, if ever, sanitized between uses. Medieval record keepers occasionally noted this. It is not clear they viewed it as a problem. Number 2. Brazen Bull. Ancient Greece gave the world democracy, philosophy, the foundations of Western mathematics, and the brazen bull, which suggests that civilization is always more complicated than it looks from the outside. The device was reportedly invented by a craftsman named Perillos of Athens, sometime around the 6th century BC. He presented it to Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragas in Sicily, as a gift. The brazen bull was a hollow bronze statue in the shape of a bull, roughly life-sized. A door in its side allowed a condemned person to be placed inside. A fire was then lit underneath. The interior of the bull was designed with a system of tubes and pipes leading to the mouth of the statue. These were engineered so that the screams of the person inside were transformed by the time they reached the outside world into something that sounded, to the audience, like the bellowing of an actual bull. Phalaris reportedly tested it immediately on its inventor, Perillos, which is one of those historical details that lands differently depending on your perspective. The device removed the human sound from the process entirely. The crowd heard an animal, not a person. Whether this was designed for the audience's comfort or for the performer's enjoyment, ancient sources disagree. Phalaris himself was eventually overthrown and, according to multiple ancient writers, executed in his own device. Again, a detail that sounds invented. Again, it isn't. The brazen bull appears at this point on the list because it introduces something the previous methods don't: deliberate psychological design. It wasn't just designed to cause harm. It was designed to cause harm in a specific, theatrical way with an audience's experience consciously considered. That level of intentional engineering pushes it into a different category entirely. Number 1. Scaphism. We have now arrived at the entry that, in the opinion of most historians who study this period, is the single most difficult to read about in ancient sources. Scaphism, also called the boats, is documented primarily by the Greek historian Plutarch, who records it being used by Persian forces, most notably on a Spartan general named Mithridates around 401 BC. It is not a quick method. That is, in many ways, its defining characteristic. The condemned person was stripped and confined between two boats, or two hollowed-out tree trunks, of equal size, one on top of the other, like a shell. Holes were cut for the head, hands, and feet, which were left exposed. The person was then force-fed a mixture of milk and honey until they developed severe digestive distress. The same mixture was applied liberally to their exposed skin and to their face. They were then set adrift on a stagnant pond or swamp, or simply left in place, in the sun. The milk and honey attracted insects. The digestive effects created conditions inside the enclosure that attracted more insects. The person could not move. They were fed regularly, enough to keep them alive. The sun and the warmth accelerated everything. Plutarch records that Mithridates survived this treatment for 17 days before he died. 17 days. The Romans had a concept they called summum supplicium, the ultimate punishment. It was reserved for the worst crimes against the state, and it was defined not just by death but by the complete removal of any dignity in dying. No burial, no ceremony. the body left to be consumed by nature. Scaphism operates on the same philosophical principle, but extends it across days rather than moments. It is not designed to kill quickly. It is not designed to be witnessed dramatically by a crowd. It is almost entirely private in its horror. Two people on a pond, flies gathering, the victim too weak to do anything but endure. It is almost certainly the worst thing one group of human beings has ever systematically done to another individual as a formal act of punishment. And the most troubling part, the part that stays with you after you close the history book, is that someone designed it. Someone thought about it carefully, planned it, refined it, and decided, yes, this is the one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Check out the channel for more history videos, and I'll see you in the next one.